Welcome back to the Kingfisher Podcast with Eric and Bron Whitley. Thanks for joining us once again today as we talk through all kinds of fun and different things.
We're talking about faith today, which is such a broad topic, but we'll narrow it down a little bit.
Yeah, faith is one of those things. I wanted to share, as we're talking about faith, a little bit of our journey in the last couple of years, and I would love to share it in a way that does not share all of our mistakes and failures with it.
But you can't really.
No, but I think it's good to be authentic and to show where we got it right and where we got it wrong.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is God was faithful all the way through it.
Yeah, and that's what I always say to God. I always thank him and say, thank you that you are always faithful, even when I'm not.
It's funny how many times I write that in my prayer journal. I really do say that so often to him of just thank you for your faithfulness. I mean, how do we get by without God's faithfulness?
Yeah, thank goodness he's not as up and down as we are.
So faith, really common topic. If you go to church, you've probably heard a sermon or 100 on faith and what it means and what it's about. And I don't want to belabor it and really go into a big theological discussion on faith, but more I want to share, I guess, a bit of our testimony of what God's been doing. Now, the passage that most people go to when we talk about faith and try to define faith is Hebrews 11:1. And it just says, faith is the substance of things hoped for and the evidence of things not seen. I love that. It's hard to apply, but I love how faith is defined as a substance of something that's not seen. So it's real. There's something there. There's something happening. And we have a hope for the things that we haven't grasped or seen or realized just yet.
And it's really easy to read that and go, oh, isn't that lovely? Yes, that's wonderful. But when you're in the middle of the things that are not seen and that are hoped for, it's really challenging to still have faith.
For something that is so, I don't know, intangible and mysterious, like faith is just kind of like, it's really hard to define it. If you take away this verse and you just try and say, well, what is faith? It's really hard to define it. But in this thing, it talks about substance and evidence.
Yeah.
Those are concrete things. Those are concrete. They're there.
Well, yeah, the evidence is missing though.
But that's where faith comes in of going, hold on. And I think faith outside of God becomes a lot harder. But because of God's faithfulness, as we were talking about, because we know his nature, we know his character, that he is faithful, you can trust, even though you may not have it in your hands right now, that it's coming. And you can trust in that.
So as Christians, we have faith in God. You can have faith as a non-Christian, but what you're putting your faith in is something that is temporary or transient or changeable or unreliable. But the reason we have faith as Christians is because of who God is, not because of us, but because we know that he's unchanging. We know that he's faithful, that he's never ending, that he always answers our prayers, and may not be in the way that we choose, but we know that he's always going to answer our prayers.
Yeah, he's the one that is the focus and the subject, I guess, of our faith. I mean, I've heard people talk about faith is like when you see a chair and you sit down, you believe it's going to hold you when you sit down. That's faith. Well, to some degree, yes, you're putting your faith in the structure of that chair to hold you.
Well, I'm old enough now to know that faith is misplaced sometimes.
Yeah, we all have a story. But for us, in the last couple of years, you know, I've probably talked about wanting to return back into sort of full-time ministry and pastoring and doing that sort of thing, and have been looking around for jobs and looking around for opportunities. And there's been so many times that God has sort of closed doors. And
so many closed doors.
And it gets to a point where you start to feel kind of rejected and maybe even abandoned.
And you start thinking, God, what are you doing?
Yeah. But 2020 vision is such a great thing when you look, like hindsight is 2020. When you start to look back, you start to go, oh.
And we always say this because we've been through these seasons before where we were like, well, God, what are you doing? Where are you? What's happening? And then we were able to look back and go, oh, I could see how you were placing the little stones for me to step onto, you know, for my path forward. They were sort of They seemed like they were all over the place, but they made a perfect path for me to follow. And then we've just been through another season now where it happened again, where we kept going, okay, well, it was a long time. It was years of praying and years of waiting and years of applying for jobs and going in different directions, trying this and that. And it was amazing how much these doors were just slammed shut so many times. So when that happened, we did actually say, well, that was a very clear door being closed. So obviously that's not the direction God wants you to take.
Yeah. And I know I personally internally wrestled with stuff. And I think I even chatted with you a few times about it, where I'm going, I know the truth and I know what I believe and I know who God is, but my experience right now is not reflective of those things, and I don't understand why. And so then obviously all kinds of questions and doubts come in where you go, is it me? Is it you? Is it God? Is it what? Like what's going on? What's preventing me moving forward with these endeavors? And it's hard in those moments. It's really hard.
It's really hard. But at the same time, we could also see how God was using this season of our life for you to sow into the kids, into our family, into, faith and friendships and all those sorts of things, and writing books and doing this podcast and all those sorts of things. So we could see that, God was working through you in this season, and it was actually a really nice time for our family having you around a lot. But at the same time, it's really hard. It was hard for you. It's hard for us to kind of go, okay, when is this going to change?
Going through those times, this is the thing I have said to people before, is faith is usually not actioned until you're in a hard or difficult place. Like when everything's just going along fine and happy and there's no stress or no worries or no big challenges, it's easy to just kind of roll through life. And faith is not actually ever exercised in those times because you kind of don't need it, because you kind of have everything. Mm-hmm. But it's in those times of lack or the dark times or those hard times where faith has to be exercised. And I think that's a good way of expressing it, of you actually have to exercise your faith and go, do I really believe what I say I believe? And am I going to hold on to this despite my circumstances and despite my perceptions of what's going on currently and whatever for the future, whatever it may be? Am I going to hold on to what I say I believe? And in those moments, that's where faith gets exercised.
Yeah. It's not really faith, as you say. It's not really faith when everything's going your way, because you don't have to believe in something hoped for that you can't see evidence of. You're seeing the evidence of it and you're not hoping for it. It's there. You've got it. So that's not faith. And I'm not saying you can't be a person of faith in the good times. You can, but your faith is actually displayed and evidenced. It is the substance. The substance of faith is shown when you're hoping for something unseen.
Yeah. Well, I remember there was a preacher when I was a kid, and he made this statement, and it's always stuck with me. He said, you're either coming out of a hard time, you're in a hard time, or about to go into a hard time.
Great.
That's kind of life. And I think it does sort of summarize what life is like. You either have just gotten out of a hard time, you're in it right now, or you're about to go into one. And that's how life goes. It's never this smooth, happy, easy ride. And as blessed as we are, this was the thing I had to almost, I don't even know if it was honest at times, but just a disciplined thing to keep going, God, I know you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
God, I know you're good.
And I think one of the things I was going to say about faith for me is you speak it out before you necessarily feel it. You don't always feel it. And I think I have a gift of faith. You know, when I do the spiritual gifts test, it shows up as faith, as being, I think, my number 1 or number 2 gift. So when I have faith in God, it's not always a feeling. So usually I start with knowing, okay, reminding myself of God's promises and who he is. So I remind myself. Sometimes then I can remind myself of what he's done in the past, so testimony. And because of that, then I speak out what I believe in this situation. So when we were going through this, I would say, we don't know what's happening, but we trust God. And I wouldn't necessarily feel great about that always, but I'm reminding myself of who God is and his promises and what he's done, so then I can speak out my faith, and then the feeling of faith follows, because then you start to go, yes, that's right. He is good. He is faithful. I know that he always comes through for me, and he always takes care of us. I know that he is good, and he's a good father who gives good things to his children. And you remind yourself of those things, you speak it out, and then the feeling of faith follows.
And I found on top of that, and I would do something similar, on top of that, I needed to look around presently, because it's in that discomfort when you're in a place that's not comfortable, where you're not where you want to be, whatever that may mean, whether that's a health issue, whether that's finances, whether that's looking for a job, whatever you're going through. When you're in that place of discomfort, I found it really valuable to turn around and look around and see what God's doing. Like, you want him to do something specific, healing, give you a job, whatever, change something, change a circumstance, but he's already working currently. Like, he's always working. And so for me, I had to look around my life and go, okay, I'm not happy about this part of my life, but God, you've done this and you've done that. And
you are doing this.
Yeah, you are doing these things. I've got all these blessings, and I would have to remember that and go, well, everyone's healthy and safe and growing. We haven't missed paying a bill. We have everything that we need. We have a roof over our, I have good friendships. I have this, I have that you have given me, God. These are blessings that I'm currently experiencing. Even though I want this other specific blessing, I'm experiencing all these other blessings. And this was something I learned early in my adulthood, because I was wanting to be a rock star and wanted to be a professional musician. The band I got to play in back in Atlanta, we had a lot of success. We never ended up getting signed. We got very, very, very close to being signed, but
you were semi-professional, and you had, we'd go do gigs with hundreds and hundreds of people.
I mean, that's the thing. And it was
good.
Play with all the other professional bands and all this other stuff at festivals and different things. But I never took that in, because I was always looking ahead.
Yeah.
When this happens, then I'll have made it.
And I would try to say that to you. I'd be like, but look around. You're getting paid to do gigs in front of hundreds of people. That's pretty awesome.
And it was really awesome to look back at it. It was really a cool time, but it all went over my head because I had this forward focus of being signed, and that was what I was shooting for. And until that happened, nothing else matters. Nothing else really impacted me. And so I've had to learn to live in the present, because at that point, for many years, I'd just been living in this future hope, right? Of this is what I'm going for, and I want to see this, but I missed out on the joy and the blessing of what was happening currently.
Yeah.
I just never...
And what God was doing.
Yeah, I just never embraced that, because I thought, that's not what I'm going for. I'm going for this.
Yeah, and it's so easy for us to get single track, focused on what it is so if there's something going wrong in our life, it's really easy, or not going the way we want it to go, either way, it's really easy to just get completely focused on that, to get down, to feel hopeless and overlooked and all those things. And as you say, what we need to do is we need to look and go, okay, God, what are you doing? So you're not doing this over here that I want you to do, but what are you doing? And if we look around and we see what he is doing in our life and in the lives of the people around us, then that will really I think that's encouraging. It is encouraging to me to see what God is doing.
Yeah. And I think another thing that I don't do so well is celebrating when God blesses somebody else. When you hear your friend or somebody else gets a job and you're looking for a job, it's really easy to go, why did they get it? I need a job. Why haven't you given me a job?
Yeah.
And instead of celebrating what he's done in their life.
Yeah, and that's a biblical principle. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's another thing to learn and to grow in. But it's in those times, that's where faith is exercised. And it's really hard to exercise faith in. But when you go back to Hebrews 11, it's saying it's the substance of things hoped for. So in that faith, it's all based, if this is not on God, then our faith is fairly meaningless, as we were talking about before. It's just empty. If you're putting faith in anything else besides God, it's going to be empty and it's probably going to leave you disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
But because our faith is in God, who is good, who is faithful, who keeps his promises, who blesses us and provides for us and has grace and mercy and love and forgiveness and kindness and all these things that he exudes, when we put our faith into him, it becomes substantive. It's substantive, right? You've got substance there to actually put your faith in. And then we have evidence of things not seen. So as we were just talking, we start with, what has God already done and who is he? That's our evidence of what is coming in the future, because the Bible says he's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So he's unchanging. So if he did it last time, he's going to do it again, because that's his nature. He is the same.
Yeah, the sort of mantra that I have for myself when it comes to those hard times and faith, I say to myself, well, do I believe in God or not? Do I believe he's real, and do I believe he is who he says he is? And if I believe those things, which then I say, yes, of course. So, okay, if I believe God's real, I believe in him, I believe he is who he says he is, then I have to believe his promises, that he's a good father, that he's going to take care of me, that he treats me better than he does, the flowers in the field and the birds in the air. He knows what I need, and he's going to give me good things. I have to believe those things, those promises that he's made.
Yeah, and I think our faith is not just for this temporary time on earth. The Bible talks so clearly about our life is so temporary. It's just a drop in the ocean of eternity. Like, it's a very short time that we live. The things that matter to us do still matter to God, even in this temporary time. But ultimately, our faith is in this eternal promise that, even, like, to use the example of maybe divine healing, if you're sick and you're praying and you're having faith to be healed, you may not be healed in this life, but when you go into God's presence, you're going to be healed, and you'll never be sick ever again. And there's a hope of this eternal promise that all these things are going to be met. Even if it's not met here on earth, it's going to be met in eternity. And so that's a big deal, even as kind of a fallback. Like, I think that's bigger than what we are talking about with our needs on an earthly level. But ultimately, for eternity, those needs are going to be met, and those things are going to be fulfilled in us for eternity.
Yeah. We know that in this life, on this earth, bad things are going to happen. And we know that we're not always going to have everything that we dreamed of. And when I say that God gives good gifts and he takes care of us and all of that sort of thing, I believe that, but I also know bad things happen. People lose their jobs, people lose loved ones, people get sick. There's a lot of things that go wrong in the world. What we want to do is put our faith in God. So instead of putting our faith in our health or in our pocketbook or in our wallet, we want to put our faith in God, because he is always faithful and he will always carry us through whatever the trial is that we're going through.
Yeah. And, I think some of the mistakes that I made through this journey and through this time all originate in fear.
Yeah.
It's all about fear. Fear is what robs us of our faith. When we start to look at the balance line on our checking account and we're going, it's getting really low. How am I going to pay my bills? Where is this going to come from? The opportunities are not there. That's when fear starts to sink in, and it starts to rob us of our faith of going, God, I know that you're faithful. You promised to meet my needs. You promised these things, but I'm scared. And this is the thing. Throughout this whole journey, we never came to a point where we were just completely desperate or broke or any of that kind of stuff. It's gotten close. It's we've had to cut back in certain ways and this and that. None of that is a horrible thing. Like, we are blessed beyond measure. Like, we really, really are. It's easy to start to indulge in those fears and those doubts. And when we do, it robs us of that faith. And when we don't have the faith, then we don't have that sense of security and peace. Yeah.
So I would say that one of the things that I've learned is that faith doesn't mean that you just blindly keep trundling along. So when, if one of you's out of work and you don't have as much money to pay for things that you normally would, you don't just go, well, I have faith God's going to provide and I'm not going to do anything about this. You have to pray and listen to God and be wise. And that means, cutting back on expenditures and changing whatever it is that you need to change to be a better steward of what you've been given. God will provide, but you have to also be wise and you have to use what you've been given wisely.
Yeah, I think that's a wonderful point to just say faith is not blind. I know that that's a term, blind faith. I don't think faith is blind at all, like true faith. I think we have to respond to God and to react in certain ways. I mean, this is partly why I have taken jobs that I don't want to take to keep going. And even in that, that's been a blessing, even though I knew this was not ultimately what God's calling me to or what God had for me. He was still providing in those moments to keep us going.
And I honestly felt at the time when you were doing those jobs and you were miserable in them, I thought, I think God is providing for us, but keeping you uncomfortable enough that you don't stay there.
Yeah, for sure. I was definitely uncomfortable. So last year I was able to have a bit of a teaching contract, which was a consistent work, but it was not what I enjoyed doing in the least. And the way I kept describing it was I was thankful, but I was not excited about it. Yeah. I was grateful. I was thankful that God was providing in this way.
Yeah. And you faithfully went to work every day. And that's what I'm talking about, being wise. So yes, God is going to provide your needs, but sometimes that comes along in ways that you weren't expecting. You had to teach for a while, and that was God providing for us.
It was.
And so you have to step out and do what God is asking you to do, even if it's not exactly what you were hoping for.
And looking back at it, I feel like, and I'm not tooting my own horn, but I'm just saying I feel like that was a step of obedience, of being faithful and obedient to what he was providing at the time. And I don't necessarily think God tests us so much. Like, I don't think he does that sort of thing exactly like we would sort of think of when we talk about testing. But it does say he does test our faith at times. And I do think as I stepped into those roles, even though they were not what I wanted to do and felt kind of obligated to it, he blessed it. Like, he really blessed it, even though it was hard and it wasn't where I wanted to be. God blessed that, and it was a blessing to me, and I hope I was a blessing to others.
I will say that we weren't always full of faith throughout this whole journey.
Not at all.
We had our times where we were like, what are you doing, God? We just couldn't see the way forward, and we're like, maybe we should do this, maybe we should do that. We weren't always full of faith. But then we always came back to, okay, we trust God. We know that he is good and he always provides for our needs, and we know that he has a plan.
Well, I think those moments were where we let fear creep in. And the danger of operating from a place of fear is you try to start to manipulate the situation and take control yourself. You try to go, all right, well, God, you're not answering my prayer the way I want you to answer it, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to meet my needs.
And it was so funny how God just so resolutely closed doors on you that whenever we tried to do that, it was like the doors was just slammed shut. And we've had that happen before. When I was going through something similar years ago, the doors would just get slammed shut. Like, nope, not going that way.
And so I think this is where faith comes in to, if we really believe he's good and he has our best interest in mind, of being okay in those periods of waiting. We're not good at waiting.
We're terrible at it.
We live in a fast food culture. I mean, we personally are not good at it, and I think humanity in general is not good at it, because we live in this fast food culture where we want what we want as fast as we can get it, and we want it right now, you know, and we want it cheap. Like we just live in that kind of mentality that if I want it, I should get it, and I should get it now. Whereas I think God teaches us to wait. Sometimes... I mean, in the waiting is where you're going to grow. In the waiting is where you go through something that builds character, that ultimately builds your faith, that you can look back. All these things that we're saying where we've looked back and go, oh yeah, the things we know is because we've gone through waiting periods and we've gone through trials and seen the other side. Yeah. But when you're in them, no matter how mature or how experienced you are, when you're in them, they're not pleasant and they're difficult.
But I would encourage you to use those times as you go through life. Use those times where God has been faithful and has come through and answered your prayers and taken care of you, to remind yourself, later when you're going through something again. Remind yourself of what he's done, because it's so encouraging to you and to other people. And so I guess we should tell everyone that we're celebrating that you finally have a new job.
I do have a new job. I don't know if I want to share exactly what it is, but I get to work with a Christian denomination, and I get to speak into churches and pastors' lives and others, and just hopefully make a really big difference and share some of my wisdom and experience, and may God just help me through it.
Yeah, and it's really exciting. And as we were saying before, we can look back and see how God led us here. It's sort of like the perfect job for you because it's close by, and you'll be doing all the things that really fill you up and that you love, which is mentoring and pastoring other pastors and training and equipping and helping develop what they need to be able to be pastors.
Yeah, I love all those aspects of it. And it's just a funny thing. Like, my job is in the same suburb that we live in. I have to commute for 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's incredible, really.
It's just one of those funny things. And it's the same as when I was in my last pastoral role. Like, God just did this thing. I was just thinking, even as we're talking, so much in this time of waiting for this with the closed doors and all that. And no one likes rejection, even if it's legitimate rejection. Nobody likes that stuff. But what it did for me is, honestly, in these last few years, I have worked out a lot of internal things that I needed to work out. There's a new confidence in me, and knowing who I am and how I'm called and what I'm about and how I can do it. And I didn't always have that. And so God's done a work inside of me in that way. And there's still things he's molding and breaking off the rough edges and all that, and that continues. But it was a time for me to sort of see some things in a different way. I think turning 50, I started to sort of see myself in a new light as well. And those are things that God is doing and has done in me to bring me to this point. But
yeah, he's always working.
I couldn't have done this probably. I wouldn't have done it at least as well if I were younger or if I hadn't gone through what I've gone through.
Yeah, for sure. And that's what we have to remember is even when we're going through those hard times, God is always working in us and through us. So we have to try to take our focus off what he's not doing and look at what he is doing and how much he loves us and is there with us.
Yeah, I hope if you're listening today and you're going through something, if you're in that middle thing, if you have just come out of something or you're in it or you're about to go into it, just pause. I think that's one of the biggest things. We rush ahead of God many times. We need to pause. We need to wait on him. We need to remind ourselves the good things about him, who he is, his character, his promises. And then I think, as you were saying, I think it's really important that we speak it out. I think it's really important. Our words carry authority. There's power in that. Now, this is not like manifesting in the occult and whatever else.
Claim it.
Yeah, all that kind of stuff. That's not what I mean. But what it is it's saying, I'm going to action and exercise my faith to say, I know, God, you're at work and that you're going to open this door or you're going to do this in my life because you've promised that you would, and I know your character, that you're faithful and that you're always good. And it's exercising that faith.
And reminding ourselves.
Yeah, and reminding ourselves. And unfortunately, we have to be reminded a lot of times.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of times. So put your faith in God and you will never be let down. Thank you for tuning in to the Kingfisher Podcast with Eric and Bron Whitley. We hope you really enjoyed today, and I hope that you will be encouraged. Put your faith in God. He will never let you down. He is always faithful, and he is always good. May you have a blessed day.